Hi, welcome to MBAX 9152 Digital Strategy. Excuse me, my week 5 introduction. My name is David Good. I'm your course coordinator for MBAX 9152. The title for this week's content is called Digital Platform Ecosystem Strategy. And for me, it's quite an interesting week's worth of content because platforms are certainly becoming the dominant strategy for information systems, and for some of the largest businesses that we have now globally. So what's the agenda for today? So I'm going to talk about the content for this week and review some of the key concepts. I'm going to talk about your to-dos for this week coming up, week 4. I'm just going to remind you guys about the mid-semester survey as well, and hopefully encourage you to participate in that survey and give us some feedback. I have been in previous semesters and previous terms where the mid-semester survey, we've gotten some really good feedback, and we've actually made changes mid-semester for a course, which has even improved the course for the remainder. So we're really keen to get your feedback mid-semester if we can. So let's do a content review, platform ecosystem strategy. This is certainly the week of the Alibaba case study. I think there's at least 4 of the papers or 4 of the readings refer to Alibaba directly as sort of the, poster child for really effective platform ecosystems. But this is not as I said, not a novel model. If you watch the video, the instructor in the video talks about the fact that 7 of the 10 largest companies globally right now by market cap are platform companies. I myself work for a very well-known platform company, which is Microsoft, for quite a few years. So I'm very familiar with the concept of working for a platform company, or a company that manages a platform ecosystem. Now, in terms of platforms, they say that there's sort of these 3 types of digitization that you have to think about. There's this process digitization where you're looking to improve operational excellence with a focus on automating information processes. There are digitization of communication processes where you're facilitating communication between the various channel members using different technologies such as chat. And then there's what they refer to as buyer digitization ecosystems, where you're making customers feel more part of a company, and the company more part of the customer through collaboration and co-creation. There are several different recommendations they talk about in terms of digitization for incumbents. This idea that you need to understand and embrace digitization, that it is coming, digitalization. The other thing is assessing your business models. I've said this before to you guys in previous weeks. We've talked about business models several times. As an organization, you constantly need to be reassessing your business model, particularly in light of new technologies. The new technology enables the new business model as the business model creates the value. The other suggestion was that incumbents should be looking to cross-pollinate ideas from other areas. In other industries, they need to invest in their employees and their channel members, and there's really a focus on pivoting quickly when they realize that they need to change their business model due to technology changes. There's a whole bunch of, like I said, there's at least 4 of the papers we're talking about this week talk about Alibaba from different perspectives. The first paper that we review talks about is actually written by someone who used to work at Alibaba, and they talk about the different parts of Alibaba's core strategy. The first part was to datafy every customer exchange. In other words, create and manage huge amounts of volumes of data around the customers to be able to understand their customers. They use software for every activity, so they automated just about every activity they could by building software around it. They got data flowing throughout the ecosystems to facilitate all those different transactions. And then they used algorithms, for example, and financial is the example they use in the paper, where they talk about using the algorithms or artificial intelligence to make loan recommendations. And to be honest, this is a lot of what I do as a consultant. If you look at my resume on LinkedIn, I work in the space of Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, and the reason why I work on those 2 areas is because they're very complementary, because the data generated by IoT feeds artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence generates the value from that data. So having some sort of AI tool sets is going to be very, very important, or algorithmic decision making is going to be very, very important to take advantage of all that data you're generating through your ecosystem. Other things that were covered in the content, this idea of pipelines versus platforms. and the new rules of strategy. So they talked about the idea that traditional companies are pipeline companies. These are companies that are essentially managing a pipeline or flow of transactions, whereas platforms are actually building an ecosystem and encouraging other entities to have transactions move across them and supporting them. This means that from a strategy perspective, if you're moving from a traditional pipeline company to a platform company, your strategy will change in a number of different ways. One way is that you're going to be moving from worrying about resource control to resource orchestration. You're going to be less focused on internal optimization and more focused on external interaction between all the different parties in your ecosystem. You're going to move from a focus on customer value to a focus on ecosystem value. So it's not just about your customers, it's also about your partners in that ecosystem, right? And then they talk about some of the characteristics of a healthy platform, that they have management metrics, that they minimize interaction failures. So for example, they talk about the example of Uber and not being able to find a ride. They maximize engagement by tracking participation and getting people to work together. And then they try to ensure good match quality. So if you're doing a multi-sided platform or a two-sided marketplace or a multi-sided marketplace, whatever you want to call it, having really good algorithms to match the two parties together to create a useful transaction is really, really important. And there's no negative network effects. So I'll talk about this in a minute, but this concept of network effects or network externalities, you can have positive network effects, you can have negative network effects, you can have direct network effects, and you can have indirect network effects. So a positive network effect would be people, for example, using social media like Facebook. The more people use it, the more value it has for the people who use it. A negative network effect would be, for example, cars. Having too many cars on the road actually generates congestion and a negative benefit to people using cars. A direct network effect would be, as I said, the more people using this tool set, the more benefit it has. An indirect network effect might be the primary use of a product or service generating secondary benefits. For example, the more DVD players you sell, the more DVDs you'll sell. So that's an example of an indirect network effect. They talk about this idea of products versus platforms and pipeline versus ecosystem. The whole idea that platform companies are beating product companies. So instead of selling products, you're building platforms. And then we'll talk a minute about this idea of coring versus tipping strategies, developing the capabilities of the platform to solve a fundamental problem and then getting people to use it. Pipeline companies who are managing a pipeline of transactions, whereas ecosystems are facilitating communications back and forth. And the two key things they talked about in the video, which I thought was really, really interesting video, some really, really good content in that video, was this idea that two things that are driving this move to platforms are this issue of transaction costs and network effects. So the whole idea is that digital technologies, including the internet, facilitate a reduction in transaction costs, which means that the benefits from having all the processes internal to the organization become less and less. So you get more benefits from actually building those ecosystems and connecting all those different groups together, and then in so doing, you develop those network effects. And then there's the case study, one of the readings, and as I said, there's 4 or 5 of the readings this week talk about Alibaba. There's the Alibaba and Indian case study, which you can read through at your leisure. As I said, I talked about network effects, this idea that there are positive network effects, negative network effects, direct network effects, and indirect network effects. And on the right-hand side of the slide, we have the diagram that they illustrate in the readings that talk about the architecture of an ecosystem or a platform play. The idea that you have producers of products and services, consumers of those products and services facilitated by the platform. There's the platform owner, and then there's the platform providers. So for example, they use the example of your mobile phone where you might have a Samsung mobile phone, which is the platform provider. The owner of the platform is Android and the Android Play Store, where they have all the different apps. The apps are the producers. The producers produce the apps, which people use, and then you as a user consume that app. More ideas from the content around platforms and ecosystems. The last paper in the readings is quite good because it talks about the roles of information systems or information and technology in multi-sided platforms, and it uses Alibaba Group as a case study yet again. Again, several of the papers cover this. It talks about the idea that Alibaba started out as although it's much more than that now, but it started out as a multi-sided platform for small and medium-sized business, where it was facilitating buyers and sellers of products, advertisers and complementary services providers all working together. It has gone through a very predictable sort of standard set of stages that they have found most multi-sided platforms go through. They talk about the sort of nascent development, and then formative, and then mature, and that there's different strategies you use in each stage of the development of a multi-sided platform. One of the core topics they talk about, key topics they talk about, is this idea of coring versus tipping strategies. So the thing about creating a multi-sided platform or a platform ecosystem is the platform has to solve a fundamental problem. It has to facilitate that communication, and in so doing, reduce those transaction costs. So coring is when you use technologies to make that platform core, or help it solve that fundamental problem. And a platform can be everything from your Xbox, where you have games, a gaming platform. It can be a Windows platform, which facilitates use of your desktop and your mobile apps. So a coring strategy is where you're using technology to solve the fundamental problem. So all platforms or all platform ecosystems have to solve a fundamental problem. The platform fixes a problem, reduces those transaction costs, and in so doing provides those network effects. Tipping, on the other hand, or tipping strategies, is where you're actually trying to get more people to use that actual platform, right? So you have to build a platform first, use coring strategies to solve the fundamental problems to make it useful, and then you use tipping strategies to get more and more people to pile into that platform. And as you get more and more people on that platform, then you get more network effects and more value. The concept of coring and tipping strategies has been well known and talked about for years from a platform perspective, but that particular paper that you read this week has actually introduced a couple more different types of strategies that organizations can use to build their platform ecosystems. So this last paper in this week's readings is actually a pretty good one, pretty important one. I would encourage you to read through a couple of times, because I think in your strategy report that you guys are doing, you could actually use a lot of the concepts from this paper. So the other strategies that they talk about aside from coring and tipping include meshing versus empowering. So the idea of meshing is you're fostering sort of mutual dependencies between the various groups within your ecosystem. Empowering is where you're enhancing the platform members to allow them to participate and contribute more fully into the platform. Encapsulating is where you're fortifying the boundaries of your platform and defending your platform by essentially encapsulating or taking on additional functionalities at the edge, and therefore sort of staking a line in the sand in terms of preventing other groups from using the capabilities of your platform to their advantage. And then the other one is they talk about delegating strategies, where you build a platform in such a way that, because some of these platforms are massive, like Alibaba is a huge business, one of the biggest in the world, you have to have a process where a lot of the maintenance and management of the platform is managed by the members of the ecosystem. And so these are all the roles of IS in a multi-sided platform. So your to-dos for this week. 1, you need to complete the core readings as per normal. 2, your discussion topic. There's actually 2 questions. Now I want to highlight yet again, I made a comment, I sent this note out to you guys as an announcement, and I just want to remind you guys that you need to make sure that when you're doing the discussions, that you, at least as part of your first post, your discussion post, answer the questions that are posed. Then when you respond to other people's posts, then you can kind of go a bit freeform and drill down into an area that you find more interesting. But it's really important that you sort of answer the core questions first. So in this case, the 2 core questions covered in this week's discussion topic are: what are the roles played by the various stakeholders in the Alibaba ecosystem? So they want you to drill in a bit and try and understand a bit how the Alibaba ecosystem works. And then they want you to talk about this concept of a Taobao village, which is a rural sort of economic hub, versus what actual rural Taobao is in terms of a structure. You're also going to have to write your, actually it's not your third, it's your 4th blog post this week, where you're going to pick a platform ecosystem and highlight the strategies that they're using to gain network effects. Remember this concept of network effects or network externalities. There's positive network effects, there's negative network effects, there's direct network effects, there's indirect network effects. So you need to talk through that. And then again, just a reminder about your group projects. Several of you now have come and talked to me and asked me, to approve a topic, which I have. So if you haven't yet, you need to come to me and propose your topic to me, and I will give you some guidance and advice around it, and I can approve it for you. And then the other things going on this week is that we're just about to release the mid-semester survey. So I would really appreciate if you guys could provide us some feedback about how you think the course is going, what things we can do to change the course, and what improvements we can make. We do every term listen, we read through that feedback, and I have, as a course coordinator and course facilitator, made several changes over the last few years for the various courses based on the feedback that I got during the mid-semester reviews. So please do provide us with that feedback, would be very much appreciated. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll chat soon. Thanks.